Again, welcome to the MPO meeting, online meeting today for the draft assignment of local input points. My name is Lydia McIntyre, and I am a Transportation Planning Engineering Supervisor with GDOT and the MPO, or the Metropolitan Planning Organization. The MPO serves the planning division within the Greensboro DOT. The MPO serves as the planning division within the Greensboro DOT. Thank you for joining us today for an overview of the assignment of local input points for the next Metropolitan Transportation Improvement Program for years 2026 through 2035. I will be recording the meeting today, and then it will also be posted on the MPO website at a later date. Now I just want to give a brief overview of what we'll be reviewing today. First off, I'll start off with providing an overview of what the MPO does in the Metropolitan Planning Organization. Then we'll get into a background about project development, as well as actually review the document that's on public review for comment right now. And then we'll just sum it up with any questions and also how you can make comments. Just to talk a little bit about the MPO first. MPOs are mandated by federal law in areas of urban populations over 50,000. Federal regulations govern the basic responsibilities, requirements, and powers. State laws also add responsibilities such as the project prioritization, which is the process that we're in the midst of right now, as well as the CTP, also known as the Comprehensive Transportation Plan. The MPO is required in areas with populations of over 50,000, as I said earlier, and works closely with local, state, and federal officials on plans and projects for roadway, transit, bicycle, pedestrian, aviation, and rail. But the MPO plays a key role in making it happen in terms of communication, identifying and obtaining funding, regulatory compliance, and getting the right ideas on the table, and also ensuring a fair opportunity for the public to understand and participate in transportation decision-making. MPOs coordinate actions between the localities, such as our member jurisdictions, which I'll share in a moment, the state, and the US DOT. NCDOT, the City of Greensboro, PART, also known as the Piedmont Authority for Regional Transportation, and area towns are the implementation agencies for transportation projects and services like transit. The MPO's work plan is carried out in close coordination with the MPO's technical and policy boards. The technical board is known as the TCC, or the Technical Coordinating Committee, and consists of staff from various agencies. The policy board is known as the TAC and is known as the Transportation Advisory Committee, and includes local elected officials and also a member from NCDOT. And on the next slide, this just provides you an overview of our member jurisdictions, as well as the members that are represented on our Transportation Advisory Committee. So you can see that we have 4 members from the City of Greensboro from the council, with Mary Kay Abuzaway serving as our TAC chair, as well as 2 Gifford County commissioners serve on our committee. And then our board member, Mr. Mike Fox, who's the chairman for the board. And then we have 2 town representatives, which they're fairly new for us, Dean Maddox from Pleasant Garden and Jim Kinnaman from Oak Ridge. And they basically are the representatives, the primary and the alternate for our small town jurisdictions. This is just our MPO staff. We have grown over the years. Everybody with comes with a diverse background, as well as a number of years that they've been with the city. You see, we do have 1 vacant position in our transit, which I'm hoping to fill in the near future. Now I want to transition into getting into the background about project development. And if you do have any questions as we're going along, always feel free to drop it in the chat, and then we can address those at the end. With the project development background, this kind of gives you twofold, like the process that this projects would go through to be developed, as well as opportunities for public involvement. So you can see there in blue, that's the transportation system planning stage. And this is pretty much where we develop a lot of our documents that generally are mandated or required, such as our long-range transportation plan, known as the Metropolitan Transportation Plan, or our bicycle and pedestrian plan or transit plan, which is currently being updated in cooperation with GTA, as well as the activities that occur during our MPO meetings. So this is like, and we're actually getting ready to prepare for our next update to our long-range plan. But right now, we really are in the process of the phase of the yellow phase, which is project selection. This includes like the prioritization process, which moving into phase 2 of that process, as well as the development of the MTIP, which is also known as the Metropolitan Transportation Improvement Program. And on the next slide, I kind of explain a little bit the difference between prioritization and how it leads to the MTIP. But just so you know that we are in this process, and this is where you can see where the opportunity for public input, it consists or is consistent throughout all of these phases, but really here at this stage is where you really get an opportunity to provide input, particularly when the project is new and just being developed. And then when we look at the two processes, there are two, because one is really a process and one is really a document, even though both ended up being both documents. But prioritization is the process that NCDOT uses to basically identify the priority projects or the projects that would be funded with federal or state dollars. And then once you identify those projects through the prioritization process, those projects that are identified for funding will move into what we call the MTIP. So the MTIP is the Metropolitan Transportation Improvement Program, but know that there's a STIP, which is the statewide. So basically our MTIP, or the Greensboro Urban Areas MTIP, is just a subset of the state. So whereas the state represents all areas across the state, the Greensboro MPO represents all our projects in our area. So it's a really good source or document to go to if you're really interested in, well, what projects are coming up in this area, what's their phasing, when will they be constructed? Those types of things are included in the MTIP. And to share a little bit more about prioritization, it is primarily quantitative, meaning that it's really about the data, using the data to identify which projects have the highest need. And this is for all modes. So your highway, your rail, your bicycle and pedestrian, transit are all evaluated, aviation are all evaluated under this process. Of course, we're not directly responsible for projects out at the airport or at PTIA, but we do coordinate closely with them during this process to help or to be the liaison to submit their projects to NCDOT. And with the prioritization process, you have 3 tiers. So you have statewide tier, regional impact, and division needs. I'll speak a little bit more in detail when we get into the projects overview about these 3 tiers. This process also accounts for or allows for local input, this is the phase of the process that we're in now, where we're gathering feedback, where NCDOT has done their analysis. We've done some initial analysis, but now that we have the numbers from DOT, we can really dig into the projects and identify which ones we really think are the best chances for getting funding. And before I delve into the projects, I kind of just wanted to provide a brief overview of the MPO methodology. And all this information that I'm sharing is online on our website, actually on our landing page, since it's under public review through August 15th. So you can go there and kind of study these materials in more detail if you would like. But with the MPO methodology, we use this methodology to actually score our points. And it's actually required under the prioritization process by law. For our criteria, because every jurisdiction, MPO or RPO, which is our sister agency, which is for the rural area planning organizations, everyone has to develop their own methodology. They require it to be quantitative as well as qualitative, but every area has to have something in place and it has to be approved by NCDOT. We did identify 6 criteria, and generally we've used this criteria throughout. This is the 7th round of prioritization. So we pretty much have used these same criteria, but we did amend it or revise it this year and added a new one, which was the high injury network, which really is kind of more emphasis on safety. And the high injury network has to do with our crashes and where we're having fatal or serious injury crashes. And just to share, at the regional, when we think about regional, you have, well, I'll come back to that. Let me finish with the MPO methodology. With our methodology, we have, like, you can see where it's weighted there. So you have the criteria, then the description, and then we did do a color scheme to kind of help identify which projects did best, with 3 categories where you can be red, it means you got no points. Yellow means you did moderate, and green means you did very well in that criteria. And you see we weighted most the performance and NCDOT scoring, because this is where it makes sense. Like, if it's scored high, then it's more likely to get funded. So we get higher weight to that criteria. Then we have multimodalism. So if it had a bike ped or freight component or any other alternate mode component, you get scoring for that. And also, we've always used through the years a priority needs list, which kind of identifies our highest need. Maybe that project didn't necessarily score well, but it's still a highest need, and we believe it's a need in the future. So it'll be identified on our priority needs list. And that's included in the document in Appendix C. And then we look at, like, the feasibility of the project, like, how much will it take? Like, are there any obstacles to getting the project? There has been right away been acquired, or there been some preliminary design? These are the types of things that we take into account to determine which projects may be the most feasible for getting to construction. And then the last 2, I mentioned the hydrogen network already, and then the impact to economic development, depending if it's in a document or it's an activity that's currently underway that the project would help support. And that gives us and so basically those criteria together would get us up to a score of 100. And I'll mention that the MPO is allowed to submit 23 projects per every mode. I mean, that's very generous of NCDOT. However, we know that although we submit that many projects, that we won't get close to that many actually being funded, depending on the funding. And we also get 1,900 points per tier. So I mentioned there were 3 tiers. At the statewide level, there's no opportunity for public input or for input from the local jurisdictions or the division. It's 100% quantitative at the statewide tier. But then at the regional and division tiers, where we are allowed to, or there's opportunity to provide input, and we can give that through our MPO methodology process. And with that, for the regional and the division tiers, we get 1,900 points. So that's for each tier that we're allowed to put 100 points. So technically, you could say if we're going to put 100 points per project, that means we could identify up to 19 projects out of however many that we've listed. And you'll see we have listed more than 23, but we're allowed to submit 23 new projects. But then there's some projects that get carried over from previous versions of prioritization that we're able to carry forward without having to enter those, because they did fairly well under the last round of prioritization, or they have a phase of the project like right away or something that's already been funded. So it makes sense to continue that project on. Now we'll step into looking at the projects. As you may have seen if you reviewed the document, I mentioned already that statewide is 100% quantitative. Usually we would have more projects listed in this for statewide, but funding is tight. Some of you may be familiar with, there was a round of prioritization 6.0. That round actually was not funded due to limited funding, and we're still seeing some of that funding tightness still show up here in prioritization 7. But we're grateful that we did get one project funded, which is U6100. It shows funding amount of 36 million. We're not sure if that would, cover the cost for the entire project. They didn't show the scheduling yet for the project, so we'll see if this is a phase, like if they phase it in, like it's for a portion, because this project really wouldn't require any right-of-way, but it really is just closures along US 29 to improve safety and mobility along the corridor. But we'll see in the final MTIP or STIP the phasing and scheduling for the project. And I just wanted to provide like an overview of the table. For the table, just showing you what's included and what you're looking at. So we have the map ID, because we have corresponding maps for each tier. And then we have the spot ID. The spot ID is maybe less important, for you as a resident, but important for staff because this is the way we track it, and this is kind of how NCDOT tracks the projects. The mode, the TIP number, which is the number that if you ever did go to the MTIP or the STIP, that you would use that number to reference the project. Project category, which is going with our 3 tiers. The facility description, and then the cost to NCDOT. And it says cost to NCDOT because we may submit a cost or have done our own, but the NCDOT, based on what we put in their system, they calculate a cost. And they've really been zeroing in on the cost because they're finding that some of the costs are cut, show that the project would cost this much, but in actuality, it's up here. So this is something that they've taken, and you may even notice as you look at our price, like, wow, that cost is really high. They took a look at the cost, and this is something that they said that inflation really soared, and it had an impact on all construction projects. Then you have the score. So you have the score there. I already talked about statewide 100%. That's why you see out of 100. And then the regional is out of 70. And the regional is out of 70 because that means that 70% of the score is quantitative, and then the remaining 30% is where we get to put our input in, but not just the MPO, but the division. So we split that remaining 30%. So 15%, when we say 100 goes towards, it's like we're saying we want to put 15 points on that project. And then the division, however, if they just choose to support the same project, that means that project could get up to the full 100 points if the division also puts the full 15. And then then you have our criteria there from the MPO, the 6 criteria that I went through, and you can see how it ranked, whether they got a 0, 2, or a 4. And then you see the total score and then our point allocation. So where you don't see 100 points means that we did not put any points on that project based on various factors. And you will see too, when you look at the regional, that you have a project, it's a rail project that goes Winston, Greensboro, and Raleigh. And I can't see it right off the number. Let me see, I can go to the next slide, you all. That one is number 4, the map ID number 4. And that one, excuse me, I said the wrong one, map ID number 21. And this one was the K line, and the points there, it shows 47. And the asterisk, that was actually donated by our neighboring MPO to the west of us, Winston-Salem MPO, because they thought the project was very important to their area, that they wanted to make sure that some additional points were shown on that project. So that means they put points on it in their area for their submittal to NCDOT. And now we've done the same. We're able to partner with each other in that way where we can donate points or to the neighboring jurisdictions. Let's see. I wanted to note here too, I'm gonna take a pause just to make sure I know I'm sharing a lot of information. I'm gonna note here too at the regional tier, if you go back to our MPO methodology, which was actually approved by the TSC and put out for public review earlier this year to prepare for this step that we're currently in, that you'll see that you don't see projects like at the regional tier. Range of projects include highway and rail, but you'll note that there are no aviation projects. So this is something that when we developed our methodology many years ago, that we identified that it wouldn't step down. And some of that has to do with the way aviation receives their funding. Also, you'll see, usually at the region, you may have transit, which would only be part in our area, or the Piedmont Authority for Regional Transportation, but no projects were submitted from part this time, so you don't see any transit projects at this level either. And also, it's important to note that at the regional tier, we're competing against Division 9, which is the Winston-Salem area, Forsyth County, and other counties to the west that are included in Division 9. We're competing against, as well as the prize within Division 7. So it's basically Division 7 and Division 9 competing for those regional funds. And at last that I saw at the regional level, I think close to 500 million was available for the regional projects. So we're excited that money is available because some areas actually show a negative value, but you can see that 500 million is really not a lot when you have thousands of projects to fund. And just to kind of go through the projects here for the regional impact, I'm really just going to highlight you all the ones that are on our priority needs list. And again, that's in the Appendix C of the document online. But you can refer to here the map and the table in the maps. So the first one that I want to highlight is the number one, which is NC 68. And this is NC 68, and this is from Gallimore Dairy up to Triad Center Drive. This is a project that we've been submitting for a while, but this would be a project to implement reduce conflict intersection. This is where you eliminate the left turn lanes. Pretty much it's to increase safety, because then you don't have the left turns and the conflict of possibly having to crash, but also it would increase mobility along the corridor. That's NC 68. And then the next project I want to highlight is the I-5965, which is number 2. I-40 and I-85 business. This is one that NCDOT has been working on now for a few years, or maybe more than a few years. And this was pretty much just through Greensboro, I-40 through Greensboro, and it's from between US 29 and Freeman Mill Road. And it's pretty much looking at widening I-40. We know that through that area that the lanes narrow between 29 and Freeman Mill. So this would be where they're looking at widening and looking at some of the interchanges like Randleman Road and Elm Eugene along that corridor to make some improvements. And you can see that that has a large price tag. It is a priority of the division as well as ours, but we'll see how it does, even though it scored fairly well at the regional. The next one is a rail project. And this is like all our rail projects are pretty much grade separations. I don't know, Craig can tell me, but I think most of these come out of our grade separation study, Gifford grade separation, Eastern Gifford Rail grade separation project. And with that, a lot of these we've been submitting. So, you'll find that you may say, well, I looked at your list last time that you did this, and I see some of the same projects. But that's a part of the process that we have to keep resubmitting. We will work with NCDOT and their prioritization staff to see like what's the best way to submit this project to see if it scores well. So we do a lot of analysis on the front end to determine how to submit it. But we have with the rail project number 3 is the grade separation at Yanceyville. And then our next project, which is number 5, Wendover Avenue and Church Street. This is another one we've been submitting for a while. And this one is like right there near the hospital, the intersection at Wendover and Church Street. And this would be to make improvements to that intersection, like improving the storage there, like for the vehicles making the left-hand turn, and as well as traffic headed westbound across the bridge there to maybe put in a right turn lane, I believe. Then the next project is at I-40. This is number 6, I-40 and I-85, and this is to improve the interchange at Mount Hope Church Road. And I think at Mount Hope Church Road, correct me if I'm incorrect, Tyler or Craig, I think at Mount Hope Church Road, this is where there was congestion, like trucks and everything, and we're looking at making some improvements there. And then the next one is actually for US 29, also that's going to be upgraded to I-785. And so this project starts here in, well, however you want to look at it, starts here in Guilford and extends up to Rockingham County. So we did do some coordination with them. That's number 8 at the top of the map. And we did some coordination, but this is basically upgraded. So it's making sense because you look at the facility and kind of creating some consistency as you go north of the loop and go into Rockingham County to upgrade it to interstate standards, which may mean wider shoulders, looking at the median, things of that nature. The next project is actually number let's see, is number 11, I think. And this is another rail project. And this one is at Mackey Road, as well as we have a number 12 is at Wagner Bend, again, grade separation. Mackey's a little more newer to the prioritization process. It's one we have been looking at submitting. And then I think we did it in part P6 that we submitted it the first time. And let's see, how well did it score? It scored fairly well with 50. So, when you see 54.07, which is the score for this one, that means it got 54 out of possible 70 points. Then our next project is NC 68. And this one is one that the town of Oak Ridge submitted a while ago. They were like along 68 between Fogelman and Alcorn Road. And this one was like access management, and for them to look at they were looking ahead at how development would be coming and wanting to have something in place where you wouldn't have a lot of conflicts and crashes. And then also number 19, which is US 70. And this one is one pretty much in the town of Sedalia. They've talked to us a lot about safety along there and providing sidewalks for pedestrians, etc. So this is a project that we did put points on. You'll see it didn't score as well, but we want to make sure because it still is a priority, but it does have a low price tag in comparison to some of the other projects. And I think that's really it that I want to highlight from the regional impact projects. I'll pause just to see if there are any questions about any of the projects that we shared at the regional. Okay. Next up, we do have the division needs projects. We do have several division needs projects listed. We did have to divide them up into two maps. So on the first map that I'm showing, it just reflects the highway projects. And again, looking at our MPO methodology, projects can cascade down. So what you're seeing is and it can cascade down one tier. So at our regional level, you can see the statewide projects cascaded down. But then here at the division tier, basically the regional projects can cascade down. So you get to step down one tier. And with the division projects, I already mentioned how division projects pretty much, this means that we are competing against other Division 7 projects. And we know Division 7 covers multiple counties, even going eastward. So we're competing against all those projects within Division 7. And at division tier, based on the last numbers I received, there's about 184 million available at the division tier. Usually the division tier, this is where you're going to see your local roads included. And this is where you see the bicycle and pedestrian projects. They do not compete at the higher tiers. They're only considered for the local funding or the state funding from NCDOT. And let me see what I was going to mention on this one, you all. For this one, for the highway projects, on our priority needs list, we have identified on the priority needs list as well as gave 100 points to, included McConnell Road, which is U6185. This is to improve, basically, to realign some intersections that are close together, McConnell, Willow Hope, and Gorell Street. This one we have submitted quite a bit, and you can see there it scored, it got a 31, almost a 32 out of 50. And then also to note, number 33, which is U6186, and this is North Church Street. And this is to realign two intersections, one at Archergate and one at Spencer Dixon. So this one is North Greensboro, this project number 33. And this is one that NCDOT has submitted for a couple of rounds thus far. And it's pretty much a safety improvement project. And then we also have number 39, which is Church Street. And this is to widen existing roadway. And this is from Lee's Chapel up to Whistling Swan Drive. And we also have 41 is on our priority needs list. This is Summit Avenue. And Summit Avenue, we actually broke up into, we initially submitted it in P6 as one project. They didn't score as well. So one thing that we do look at, or that even NCDOT does look at too, is cost. So one of their criteria is benefit cost. So how much time does it save for the user, which is they call it travel time delay, or look at how much it reduces the delay for the driver, as well as they look at the cost. So how much benefit am I getting to the cost? So this is one we broke up, and this one particular project is from Cone Boulevard up to High Cone to modernize it with primarily making some improvements at those intersections along that corridor. Any questions about any of these projects before I move on to the division tiers and the alternate modes? Okay. For this one, again, division needs, and the ones that I would highlight from here, I mean, I will note here, we do a lot of analysis for all of our projects, but particularly our GIS analyst, she almost replicates for the bicycle and pedestrian project. She almost replicates what NCDOT, how they score it. And because she does that, we generally do pretty well or very well in getting our bicycle and pedestrian projects funded, which is really good because the funding is limited for it. Most of the funding from this process, 90% goes towards roadways, and then the remaining gets flexed. But one of those options is so much percentage will go towards the bicycle and pedestrian projects. And it may be 96%. You can correct me and let me know, Tyler, but there's a split with the majority of it going towards highway, and then a certain percentage held back for the alternate modes. For this one, we wanted to highlight the A&Y Greenway, which coincides with U6108, which is like that was the project that we had with Battleground and making improvements between Fernwood and Wendover Avenue. And we know that we have the A&Y Greenway. So this project did very well. It got a 41.49 out of 50 points. So that's really good. So that may possibly get funded. We'll see. And this is from Hill Street to south of Rollins Road. Then we also have Westgate City Boulevard. This is a greenway or off-road separated linear bicycle facility. And this would be from Coliseum Boulevard to Murrow Boulevard, which would be nice because we know that would go past the UNCG campus. And then the next project that we want to highlight is the Windsor-Chavis NOCO Community Tunnel. So I think everybody's familiar with the NOCO, the Windsor-Chavis NOCO community center that's being built. So one of the requests with the Parks and Rec from that project that's going in, that's fully funded for the center, is to make improvements to the tunnel that's underneath Gate City Boulevard. I believe it's still open now, but it's still not up to code, or, it's narrow. I shouldn't say not up to code, but it's like low and narrow. So we want to make it feel more inviting and safer to trespass with lighting, etc. And I believe they're going to do some improvements to the park on the south side. So we anticipate a lot of uses going back and forth. And the tunnel actually did pretty good with almost scoring 42 out of 50. And it does have a low cost, so that's favorable.
It's $2.6 million. What are they getting for their $2.6 million?
You said, what are they getting? The tunnel? They would be getting the upgraded.
The tunnel estimate was $2.6 million, I believe, on your chart there. I'm just curious what improvements they're planning to put in.
Well, they would look at it further, but we would like expanding it, making it bigger, right? Possibly looking at the height of it. So I don't know if it needs to be taller. And
so it's going to be rebuilt.
Yes.
What you're saying. Okay. Thank you.
They would redo the tunnel. Then we have also the Buffalo Creek Greenway. This is number 5. And this is the Buffalo Creek Greenway and Tankersley Greenway. And you'll see that sometimes when you look at our projects, you're like, well, they combine several projects together. This is just a way for us to try to get our, biggest bang and get more dollars in our area where we combine it. So if they work good together, we do a lot of analysis to combine them, like this project here. And that's from east of Yanceyville Street and Elm Street to Summit and Church Street. So you have 2 different greenways that we combined there. And again, it did really well. And then next I wanted to highlight Summit Avenue, which is another off-street separated linear bicycle facility. And that's from Sullivan to Textile Street. And again, you can notice a lot of the prices for bicycle and pedestrian are comparably in lower cost. And that makes it a little easier, but the dollars are limited. David, did you have another question?
Yeah, I have several questions about this list. First of all, on that Buffalo Creek route, isn't part of it already completed?
Yes.
The only portion that's missing is Tankersley.
Well, they want to
The portion that goes from Yanceyville to Church Street's already complete.
Yes, that's correct. So what they want to do now is go from Yanceyville to the east along Buffalo Creek and also do the sectional tankers.
Okay.
So they're not connected. They're disjointed projects, but
Okay. And so I have a question about projects 9 and 13, which are not on your list.
The Cornwallis Drive.
So the Cornwallis one came up because there was a proposal by NCDOT to rebuild Benjamin from Wendover on north. And that whole intersection would effectively be blocked for bicyclists at Cornwallis and Benjamin. What is the status of that project?
The Benjamin project, we pulled money from that and moved it over to we took money off of that and moved it over to the Rock Creek Dairy I-40 interchange project.
Right, and moving the money helps, I agree, but what is the project status? Are they eliminating the project?
It's unfunded.
It's unfunded, like Craig said, and it didn't score particularly well in this round, David, so it probably needs to be rethought and resubmitted in P8 in some different format.
Okay.
And also along those lines, the interchange project at Wendover and Benjamin that's been proposed also is being rethought somewhat. It's very likely that bridge will be replaced before the interchange improvement gets funded, which would substantially reduce the cost of the interchange and make it a lot more feasible. And ideally, those two projects, upgrading the interchange or modifying the interchange at Wendover and then dealing with Benjamin Parkway, more likely through a series of intersection improvements and possible like bike ped accommodations on the residential side at least, would probably replace a widening concept. Because I think, it remains to be seen, more work needs to be done, but it would appear to us at this point that upgrading those intersections, like providing improved traffic flow and bike ped accommodations across, would be a better solution.
And I don't disagree with you, but the problem came up because there was a prioritization of moving cars through as quickly and as fast as possible without really considering pedestrians and bicyclists as existing at all. So we're still very concerned about that. The other project I'm concerned about is 13. I will tell you that amongst cyclists and pedestrians, having a crossing of a freeway without any on-ramps is a huge, huge plus in our community.
You're at Van Story, right,
David? Van Story is one of the very few crossings of I-40 that has no ramps or anything to worry about. It's an ideal pedestrian bicycle passageway. And I'm just curious why it's not a high priority.
What do you think should be done, or what do you?
Well, I think the number of traffic lanes ought to be reduced, sidewalks added to the mall side because there are simply no sidewalks on that side.
There is
and your project there that you have listed for 13 pretty much does that. Well, maybe not reduce the lanes, but but I'm just curious why it got a low score.
Well, some of David too, I would go back and look at, so like I'm looking at, well, when you asked that, my first thing is to go back and look at how it scored. So it didn't score, like if we look at the other price, and yes, we did skip some price and jump down, but again, remember, we're looking at feasibility, like we're looking at different factors to see. And so like the one you asked about Cornwallis, Tyler would have taken into account, hey, we relocated money from the other project. So maybe this is not as urgent as we, even though it scored well.
So for instance, economic impact, you gave it a 0, even though it allows people to actually access the mall to get to work by bicycle and by walking. And yet for some reason it gets a 0. Is it getting a 0 because it's not on a major freeway off ramp? I suspect that that's the main reason.
Well, it's looking more future. So like it's existing, right? So like if we accounted for it, just the existing given. This is about future. So like it's in a future plan or the development's underway right now. So this is more that, hey, this is helping something in the short term. Because, you know, every road pretty much would almost get a 4 if we accounted for that, right? So it's almost
Well,
like
if you
looking at the
accounted for
future.
pedestrians and bicyclists, actually Wendover would score much lower. So would Gate City. They're extremely dangerous streets to ride on. They're extremely dangerous to walk on. You've seen how many crashes you have with pedestrians. What you need to do is promote routes that are safer to walk and bike on. And Van Story is one of those streets.
Yeah, but Van Story does have sidewalks on both sides right now, David. It
Right,
is
it has
wide.
some, but it's not straight through. And your project asks for that, which is quite reasonable.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Well, I think the thing is, the city will do that project. We'll probably end up using MPO directed funds, not prioritization funds for it. I would imagine.
I don't really imagine, and we both know that there's a huge number of projects that have been delayed or canceled because there wasn't enough city funding, and how dependent we are on state funding for a lot of projects. That's why I'm concerned about it.
Okay.
Well, David, this is your opportunity. So thank you for sharing that. We can take a look at it. This is the opportunity for you to share. Like, so I've taken the notes about Van Story and about Cornwalls. I think we kind of answered your question about Cornwalls. I think we agree that both are needed, but we can go back and take a closer
And
look
then
at
I have
that.
a general question about the point scoring. When you
Okay.
score your 1900 points and 100 per project and that sort of thing, do you, how should I put it? Do you put the points to make sure that each city council district gets roughly the same number of points?
We don't look at it that way because, you know, it's about how well the project does. So you can see how we did skip around. So we look at the different factors. So we don't necessarily look to say, hey, did this district, because it's about what's going to do best with NCDOT and what can, like, what may be important to the
Right. I
division.
do notice, excuse me for interrupting you, I do notice that the project boundaries seem to follow city council district boundaries pretty strictly. That you'll often divide projects into pieces so that they fit, you know, you'll have a continuous project on a main
I
street,
see. I see
but
what you're
you'll break
saying.
it apart into pieces so that they fit different districts. So I am curious whether you also do the scoring based on districts. It's just a general question.
No, not generally. It's about the
Yeah.
factors that we've included. So
And
just on the criteria.
the other thing, David, you'll notice is we started grouping together large sections of projects, like and a more coherent network improvements. So like a project like Merritt Drive, Gentry Street, Spring Garden, Fraser, these streets all connect in some way. So it's like the idea is to go in there and like make a series of related improvements and make a big difference, not at all like stopping at a council district or anything like that.
Right. And I do see that. But my question is partly how you do the 1900 points of scoring.
Okay. It's designed to
And
maximize the potential for funding while meeting MPO priorities. It's not at all designed to just spread the wealth around or like show people that like there's a project here, there's a project there, for the most part. Because the whole point of it is to get funding rather than to make a symbolic gesture. Although, you know, like Lydia said, there are more points than there are likely funding slots. So there may be a little bit of that. Like, okay, Sedelia's project, the modernization didn't score well enough to really be a strong contender, but it was felt that it was important enough to them and it had been a recurring enough topic of discussion at the TAC that it should be noted with points or allocated points. And actually, the Summerfield Greenway was like that originally too, because it was very much marginal in its scoring. We didn't know that it would get funded, but we put full points on it anyway, or the MPO did, you know, taking our recommendation and just like going with it. And then the division actually put 100 points as well. And lo and behold, the project got funded. So sometimes it does surprise us how these things turn out.
David, to
okay,
be
and then,
honest with you,
sure.
David, to be honest with you, it might be 3 or 4 of these projects that get funded, right? So that we
Right.
show all these points, but you know, very likely, definitely no more than a handful. And based on what was funded at the statewide tier, I don't know if that'll be even more reduced. What we've been used to getting, then we may not get that many this year. So it's, you know, like you said, we are trying to balance it. We try to make sure we take advantage of all possible funding sources. We even, with our new MPO-wide traffic safety plan that we're doing with the federal dollars we got. The goal is to update our plan MPO-wide and then go after implementation dollars. So whereas we is limited, like you said, at the local level, now we also at the state level, that we're trying to look for all possible sources to get projects funded. And, this is also why we have the Bicycle BPAC Advisory Committee, Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee, to get more feedback and to hear you all's concerns. So we definitely are grateful that you joined the meeting today to share your concerns with us.
And then one final general question. I noticed a vast, even within bike ped projects, very large differences of funding levels, or rather prices and costs.
False.
Is there advantages or disadvantages of having projects be fairly cheap or fairly expensive? For instance, you have a $400,000 project, $12 million project, both bike ped. Are there sometimes advantages or disadvantages of breaking up a project into smaller pieces or consolidating a whole bunch of projects into a larger? Is there sort of a magic price tag that you look for?
No, David, but it is true that somewhat larger is better than small. So that $400,000 project, we really tried to avoid submitting those because points are expensive. There's not that many to go around. The division has fewer than the MPO, and we really want to get a project that's big enough to kind of justify it, but not so big that the division might say, well, that's going to consume too much of the division budget. We can't support it. So I think, a few $1 million ideally would be the floor of what we'd really be kind of focusing on. And ideally, hopefully we'd get funding for one of the larger bike ped projects or two, like the Gate City project perhaps, or one of those others that Lydia listed or discussed on the PARD needs list.
Right.
I think those are all potentially in the feasible range for funding. Not completely sure, because the other thing, like Lydia was saying, we have DOT gave us a snapshot of how much revenue they expect or they think is currently available for these programs. But then they also said, well, we're continuing to update project costs and so forth. So the final number will be different than the number they've said. So there could be either a little bit more funding available than we expect, which is probably unlikely, or there could be less. And so, it's really like we're just going to have to play a wait and see game with them and just see how much capacity there is this, next year, basically, when this thing gets ready for approval.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there any substantial difference between Project 2 and Project 14 on this list? Both on
Project
Westwood City
2.
Boulevard. Are they just two different sections?
One is from Coliseum to Mirror, and then you said 14?
Yeah, 14.
And that's Westgate, Elm Street to I-40.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. I think that was it for the project overview and looking at division needs projects. You can always take a look at the document to study the projects more. On our next slide, we just want to share our next steps with you. So right now, we're in the public review that will take place through August 15th. And then we'll actually have our approval at our TAC meeting, which is open for the public, which is online. You can always access our website to get that information or to register to attend. And that's on August 21st, and that'll be at 2 p.m. And then after that meeting, very closely, we'll be submitting these projects online to NCDOT. And if there's any deviation, like based on public comments, you can go back to our website and the final allocation of points will be noted there. I have released both the regional and the division tier projects listing at this time. But as you can see from the schedule, that the division projects will be actually approved their allocation of local input points in October at the October TAC meeting. And then we'll submit that in November to NCDOT. And then it's expected that the draft 2026 to 2035 STIP will be released in January 2025. This process is pretty much a 2-year process. So every 2 years, we go through prioritization and have the opportunity to submit new projects. And on the last slide is information about how to submit your comments. There is an online survey through SurveyMonkey that you can access through the document and submit comments there. You can always email us at our MPO email address and we'll receive it. Or you can write to me and share, or even call, which I receive calls too, that you can call me at 336-373-3117 if you would like to submit comments about our draft local input assignment of points. And I will pause here just to see if there are any additional questions.
Thank you.
If not, thank you, and thank you, David, for sharing, joining us in person today. If not, we are grateful that you attended our meeting today. And if you were unable to attend in person, thank you for taking the opportunity to go back and review it at a later date and time. And again, all comments can be submitted through August 15th. Thank you so much. Take care. Bye-bye.